25th, 2025. Madam Town Clerk, could you do a roll call, please?
Mayor James,
Here.
Councilman Winkler,
Present.
Councilman Trollinger,
Present.
Councilwoman Bryant Ward,
Present.
Councilman Jenkins.
Here.
Madam Mayor, you have quorum.
Thank you so much. If I could ask everyone to stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Council, if you've had a moment to look at the agenda, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion, we approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. And if you all have had a moment to look at the January 28th minutes, I will entertain a motion from someone on that subject. Anyone?
I would make a motion to approve the minutes of January 28th, 2025 as presented.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Brings us to our public comment section. If there's anybody that would like to speak tonight, I ask that you state your name, whether you live in the incorporated town limits, and if you could keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, that would be greatly appreciated. Do I have anyone? All right. Oh, just like the, thank you. Next on our agenda is proclamation for Women's History Month, and then for Maryland Day. So Councilwoman Bryant Ward, as you have just been given the ability to, yeah, Women's History Month. Yes, that's what I said, didn't I? And I said that we have Maryland's Day too. If you could read, did I give you?
We can.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, that's here's.
Here it is. There we go. All right. So if you could, please read the proclamation.
Proclamation Women's History Month, March 2025. Whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of our nation in countless recorded and unrecorded ways. And whereas American women have played and continue to play critical economic, cultural, and social role in every sphere of life of the nation by constituting a significant portion of the labor force working inside and outside of the home. And whereas American women have played a unique role throughout the history of the nation by providing the majority of the volunteer labor force of the nation. And whereas American women were particularly important in the establishment of early charitable, philanthropic, and cultural institutions in our nation. And whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background served as early leaders in the forefront of every major progressive social change movement. And whereas American women have served our country courageously in the military, and whereas American women have been leaders, not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also as the abolitionist movement, the emancipation movement, the industrial labor movement, the civil rights movement, and other movements, especially the peace movement, which create a more fair and just society for all. And whereas despite these contributions, the role of American women in history has been consistently overlooked and undervalued in the literature, teaching, and study of American history. Now, therefore, we, the Council of the Town of La Plata, proclaim March 2025 Women's History Month in the Town of La Plata and call upon all citizens to observe this month and International Women's Day on March 8th, 2025, with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities that celebrate women's achievement, raise awareness about discrimination, and inspire inclusion. Council, this is signed by the Council of the Town of La Plata, Janini James, Mayor, David L. Winkler, Councilman, Matthew D. Trollinger, Councilman, Evelyn Bryant Ward, Councilwoman, David M. Jenkins, Councilman.
Thank you so much. And Maryland's Day.
Okay, proclamation for Maryland Day, March 25th, 2025. Whereas the distinguished and heralded traditions of Maryland began on March 25th, 1634, as two small sailing vessels, the Ark and the Dove, approached southern Maryland shores and landed on St. Clement's Island, allowing settlers to disembark onto Maryland soil for the first time. And whereas Maryland Day, March 25th, is a day all Marylanders are encouraged to commemorate by participating in activities designed to celebrate our history and reflect upon the vast and diverse offerings of our state. And whereas Maryland Day invites us to reflect on the ongoing evolution of American democracy, Maryland's integral role in that process, and the impact of Marylanders on the nation's past, present, and future. And whereas by celebrating our successes and reckoning with our setbacks, we deepen public understanding of our complex history, strengthen public appreciation for service to our country, and inspire public engagement in civic life. Now, therefore, we, the Council of the Town of La Plata, do hereby proclaim March 25th, 2025 as Maryland Day in the Town of La Plata, and do commend this observance to all of our citizens to join in celebrating Maryland's 391st anniversary. Council of the Town of La Plata, Janine James, Mayor, David Winkler, Councilman, Matt Trollinger, Councilman, Evelyn Bryant Ward, Councilwoman, and David Jenkins, Councilman.
Thank you so much. So two important things coming up in March. That brings us to our monthly department reports. The first one up, Finance, Larson. Do you have any questions for Karina for her report? Go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for the report. On page 22 and 23, there's a 10% variance for sanitation and a 12% variance for water fund. Is there, I guess I'm asking, what is the concern or what's the issue of that, those two items?
Which pages?
Page 20, I'm sorry, page 17, I believe. Uh, 15, I guess.
All right, page 17
There's a
for
water,
water.
yes.
And which were the ones that you were questioning?
Well, there's this water fund, there's a 12% variance.
Yeah, that is from what was happening last year compared to what's happening this year.
Okay,
In these reports, I compare where we're at last year to this year, and there are also the budget reports that are after the comparison for the actuals.
thank you. And then I'm not sure what pages is on. I guess.
I wrote down the pages that you guys see. So whatever
Okay,
pages that you
thanks.
see is what I have in here.
You have some notes called on, I think it's page 21, budget versus actual. And I'm just, so what is meant by employees changing coverage election for a qualifying life event?
So an employee that may have been on maybe an employee and spouse, they had a baby, now they're on the family plan. So those things weren't anticipated, so they're not in the budget. And that's part of the reason why we only have 22.8% of the remaining budget under that line item.
Okay. And then the final question, I think it's page 24 where you have the finance department updates. And so you all met with the department heads to discuss the upcoming budget. So there's some reference to goals and objectives. Is there any more, are we going to get any more information as specifically what they are or what they should be?
Well, you're gonna, during the budget discussion, right now, the budgets are with the finance committee.
All right.
And they are asking a lot of questions and asking for data. So I'm going back to the departments, trying to get that data so that the finance committee can continue their review and make their recommendations.
But we'll be able to get that kind of information as
Yes,
part of the process.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any questions? Larson? Thank you very much. Human Resources, any questions for Director Kennedy is not here today, but Ms. Minor will be able to answer if you have any. All right, next, Director Mossier. Inspections. Or actually, any questions on his report?
Yes, we've been getting some concerned emails regarding Pine Grove. I was hoping you could update us as to what the status is, where we're at as far as their compliance.
Absolutely. Reached out to the MDE inspector and had some questions for her, how things were going in Pine Grove. Specifically asked her about the amount of violations that was circulating. She reassured me that that did not require any town intervention, that the infractions were mostly very minor in nature. She gave a few examples of that, such as silt fence getting knocked down, dirt and mud being dragged out into the street. She did mention that DR Horton is very responsive. She actually sent an email saying that they were very responsive on correcting things and that it was such a massive project that it was not uncommon to have this many violations. She did note that some of the violations keep happening over and over. They're separate offenses and separate violations, but they keep happening. So her department was checking to see what their next actions would be and what their next move would be.
How often does MDE come out to site? Do you know, or when the last time they were out there based on your conversation with her?
Unfortunately, I don't. The inspector will call us if there's an issue, and that's townwide. And it has probably been 6 months or more since my last communication with her. So she'll only, if there's an issue that we need to be aware of, she'll contact us. But other than that, they handle it internally, and I don't hear much from them. So I couldn't answer as to how often she comes out.
All right, any other questions for Aaron?
So the inspector from MDE only comes out every 6 months?
No,
Or-
she only communicates with me personally every 6 months or so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
So Aaron, excuse me, because we are getting a lot of these, if they're repetitive and yet the response in her email or in her notes in the email that I read was that these are repeated over and over and over, but they're the same infractions. But you're saying telling you that they're responsive. Well, if they're the same infractions over and over, that doesn't sound very responsive to me.
The issue is there's a lot of contractors, subcontractors, dump truck drivers that are in and out of there knocking silt fence over. So there's a whole lot of moving parts.
But that's DR Horton's responsibility to make sure that their contractors, subcontractors, dump truck drivers and all. I mean, I get
It
it.
is,
There's a
but
lot of
it-
moving parts, but that's part of their responsibilities to make sure those moving parts.
It very much is. It is a 300-acre project. There's a lot going on. But I did make note in my conversation with her that she said it was not uncommon. And I'll point that out again. It was not uncommon for her to encounter these sort of issues on a project that large. So I know that and I've said it at previous meetings, I know my interaction with DR Horton, when we come up with concerns and there's issues, they're very responsive to our needs. So I'm hoping that continues. And again, she did say that they were looking deeper into it as far as MDE's next move to try to eliminate these issues that keep coming up. So it's my hope that things will get better.
Kind of piggybacking off of Councilman Winkler's questions, but just thinking about one thing that you said, that most of the violations were minor in nature. I know there was a noted significant violation. Can you explain to us the difference from MDE's perspective as to minor versus significant?
Sure. I don't know what their criteria is, so I don't want to speak for them. The few examples that she gave, would be in the code enforcement realm, when we encounter these issues, when I say they're minor in the grand scheme of things, I'm not minimizing the impact that they have. But again, we go back to noise would be a part of that, the silt fences getting knocked over, the mud in the street. These are all examples of things that certainly need to be dealt with. But as far as what she considers a major violation, I wouldn't want to speak for her on that.
Is it important to us as a town to know where there are significant violations, what those are, so that, we're not on the passive approach, every 6 months or so? Because MDE is also a massive operation. They're not just looking at Pine Grove. What responsibility do we have as a town in looking into significant events that they've maybe found but not alerted us on,
I've spoken with our stormwater manager, Melinda Adams, about it, and she advised that the way the soil conservation, storm, all of that is out of our jurisdiction. So as far as us piggybacking on top of MDE and doing those inspections and things like that, that would be kind of outside of the town's realm. We leave it to them to take care of that. I know that on previous projects, the inspector has, she's very thorough. I could speak very highly. We've had issues in Quailwood. We've had issues in Clark's Run. I think that it's just such a large project that the optics of it, at 104 violations, the optics of it do not look good. But again, it's unfortunately very common.
I hate to say that makes it much more important, but some of the complaints that we're getting are not just fence stuff, but it's sediment, it's erosion, it's trash going into the woods. They've cut down so much already. And I wonder, what is our point, of which we follow up on Councilman Jenkins' request previously of having DR Horton come to a community event with the town or come meet with the town and say, look, we've had 10 violations that have happened over and over and over again, and they may be classified as minor, but they're not minor to our residents because we're hearing from them. Sure. What's that threshold, do you think?
I think what I can do is I can facilitate that process. I can reach out to MDE, to the inspector, get updates on the status, the problems, the issues, how they've been corrected, and moving forward, I can have a lot more information to kind of keep you aware of what's going on, so we have something solid to work off of.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Mercy, you said that DR Horton is very responsive when you brought issues. What type of issues are you bringing to him?
We've had noise concerns that we've dealt with. We've had the traffic with the dump trucks speeding in and out of there. We also had a issue with dust control. There were some complaints regarding heavy equipment moving a whole lot of dirt around there, and dust was flying. So they actually had to bring out a water truck. They have to sit there. They have to wet it down so that if they're moving dirt, it's very minimal impact on the community. Any concerns that I've had with them, I have 2 points of contact with DR Horton, and it doesn't take days. It takes minutes for them to respond. And I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Thank you for the report. Appreciate your efforts on this. Just a follow-up question. I know we've asked before about y'all, I think the planning department has monthly meetings, given the size of the project, with the representatives and I guess the contractors from DR Horton. So does MDE go to those meetings? They attend those meetings?
I have not been a part of these meetings, Michelle. I know that you have been a part of them.
MD has not been to the meetings.
The soil erosion control, which is a county function.
Yeah, they may have construction meetings on site, but the meetings that we're having are not they're with the DR Horton representatives and their attorneys.
So I would just build off some previous comments by Councilman Trollinger about, I guess, just more transparency about the violations. I mean, I'm frankly, I'm troubled when it says minor, but yet 104, and it just concerns me. And then again, I would just underscore the previous comment that I know at least 2 years ago, we made a request just to have them come on an annual basis, D.R. Horton, and say, here's our project, this is what we've done, this is our future plans. It's not a public hearing, it's not a browbeating session, it's just to understand, frankly, for me at least, who you are, what are you doing, and because obviously they have and will make a huge investment in the town, but so are we as well. And so that's very troubling that we don't get them to come talk to us. And then finally, I just remembered you mentioned earlier about the trucks traffic. Has there been, from your perspective, has there been any, because of the loads and the things they're carrying, has there been any deterioration of town roads when they pull out of there?
I've not heard of anything. Public Works certainly would advise me of that. I don't know that they've received any issues. The concerns that we got, and we, from a code enforcement standpoint, we try to deal with it initially, making contact with D.R. Horton before we have to get the police department involved. The complaints that we got were on that La Plata Parkway of trucks moving in and out of there too quickly. D.R. Horton.
That's the one that comes out on Rosewood?
On the other end on Charles. Yeah. So they don't connect as of yet.
Yeah, but I mean, they're coming out the other end of Rosewood too.
And so we were able to reach out to them, and they handled that internally. I know that there's some concerns about the heavy trucks around town. So hopefully that's something that.
So Charles Street, obviously the state highway, Rosewick's the county. So have you received any information about how the truck traffic and the weight and the stuff it has, or it could deteriorate those roads as well?
I have not received.
And so is there any mechanism where if there's some perceived damage, that they have to fix it?
I have not encountered that.
Because some communities, the developer, if they can document, they got to fix the roads.
Right, absolutely. That would be something that we.
Because I know the county does it for sand and gravel operations. Thank you.
One more question.
Sure.
So I'm seeing a lot of commercial vehicles parked in residential communities. And I thought that they couldn't do that. So I know I've spoken to you, and I know I've spoken to Ryan, and I've gotten some decision, but it didn't make sense to me. So can you explain to me how it is that they're able to park on public streets in these communities?
Sure. The commercial vehicles are defined in our code by the gross weight of the vehicle. So your standard half-ton, 1-ton pickup trucks, vans would be exempt. The commercial vehicle code does not deal with the vinyl wraps, signage on the vehicles. It's strictly by weight.
Okay.
Certainly if you have any heavy equipment, heavy vehicles, we would address that right away.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job. Thank you. All right, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening. Does anybody have any questions for Chief? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's not in regards to your report, but I reached out because a resident complained about Martin's Crossing, Glen Auburn, and I think it was going to go to the safety committee to see if we could put a 4-way stop or a crosswalk or something. Has there been a decision made on that?
I don't think a decision's been made. I know we went out, we had the new planning director take a look at it. But Michelle, I don't think we've made a decision on it yet, but it's something we can get back to you quickly about.
Okay.
Any other questions for the Chief? All right, great. Thank you very much. Oh,
Becca just got back from Deep Creek Lake. She was with Special Olympics Maryland. They paid for her entire trip up there, but she was awarding medals to skiers and figure skaters and everything for the Winter Games. And she shared the first person she put a medal on was from Martin Drive in La Plata. It's just how it worked out. So.
Chief, before you leave, I'm sorry, could you just tell us what Ryan is doing in conjunction with Pine Grove this week?
Yeah, sure. One of the concerns that was brought to our attention was the amount of heavy vehicle traffic on Washington Avenue. So I have Ryan doing 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon, 4 days this week, noting dump trucks and other heavy vehicles. And if there's a pattern, it's always dump truck company X. He's writing that down. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to move him down to Willow next week and kind of do the same thing of vehicles going in and out. But that should give us a perspective of what companies it is, how heavy the traffic is, and actually if we need to extend that more than 2 hours a day or something. But he's been on that assignment. I will send pizza to his car or whatever he may need. But it's not glamorous, but he's diligent, and each day he comes in and gives me a little bit of a report.
And I have heard through the grapevine that just him being visible there has slowed the traffic down just a little bit.
I'm sure it has, and we constantly get complaints of that right across in the firehouse where people go to make a left-hand turn.
Yep.
People using the turn lane. So he's been documenting that, and it's something like in his 4 hours of 40 or so violations of that. So the toughest part for us there is actually being able to enforce it. You actually need two people, one to watch it and then one stop somebody farther down. But he is collecting data.
Wonderful.
I do, if I may, I just one question that I forgot to ask, and I apologize. Speaking of truck traffic, and I know this is not per se your road, but I've visibly noticed an uptick in speeding of trucks on Rosewick St. Charles Parkway. And so have you gotten any reports or anything from the sheriff's department about that?
No reports, but it's something we can, they have a team that they do heavy vehicle inspections and enforcement. We can let them know the observations, and I'm sure they'll be out there.
I mean, I don't have a camera, but I mean, I travel that road like this morning and this afternoon, and they're moving.
Yeah.
They're not staying 50, I can tell you that.
Collisions with dump trucks and heavy trucks are
Yeah.
very unforgiving.
Thank you very much.
Real quick, Chief, any possibility coming from you, the word only written on that turn right there across from the firehouse to prevent or at least warn people not to sidestep coming from you to the state highway? Maybe, I mean, how hard would it be to paint the word only to turn into that neighborhood as opposed to going around?
It's an email, and then we could follow up with a phone call. What I have found in,
I mean, I'll pay for the paint.
yeah. Well, I'll show up in the middle of the night and do it or something.
Exactly.
Yeah. One of the things with state highway is you'll develop a report of somebody, and then very soon thereafter, they're assigned to another place or they've moved on to something else. But we'll make that phone call tomorrow.
And if not, Chief, bullards are always good. Putting the bullard, I love a bullard.
Yeah.
So thank you. All right, next up, thank you, Kelly, for coming out here. Director Phipps, does anybody have any questions on Director Phipps' report? Yes.
I know this is random, but there seems to be a lot of Freedom of Information Act requests. Does it ebb and flow like this?
No, this is very unusual. And we still
I
have
guess
to-
there's no reason to know why.
Nope.
Okay. And then there's a reference toward the bottom where there's a community development, community roundtables, preliminary schedule. Do you know what that, I don't know what that is.
It was a resident initiative.
Okay.
They wanted to bring the Charles County Citizens Academy to have a
Oh.
version here in La Plata.
Okay.
But in talking through it, they felt like a Citizen Academy seemed too formal and less of the small town feel that we all enjoy. And so we wanted to have, they proposed community roundtables. So we'll have those scheduled June through November this year to kind of try it out as a pilot program. And we'll be here in the chambers once a month from 6 to 8.
And that would assume to be talking about town functions and departments?
We'll
and
have, yes, we'll have
education?
different,
Okay.
a different department, a different kind of, it's themed because we do
Right.
love a theme party. But just like Explore La Plata, we have Lead La Plata, we'll have the elected officials and the executive and administration, all the opportunities that residents can have to come and participate in our local government. We're also going to have some collaboration with our downtown businesses as far as sponsoring refreshments so they can come talk about their small business and get to know longtime residents, new residents, and start some conversations.
Great. Thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Planning, Ms. Minor. Any questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I noticed like during the snow removal, there were still some streets in residential communities that had not been dedicated to the town. Do you know how that works? I thought that once all of the construction was finished and the mesh that stops the settlement from going down into, they could turn the roads over. Any updates on those towns that have not been dedicated?
No real updates, but they need to be up to town standards for town code. And
And who does it? Who's gonna go out and,
the town will go out and inspect them to make sure that they are up to the standards before we take them over. But it's the responsibility of the owner
the developer?
to do,
let
the
you-
developer, the owner, to do all of that.
To let you know that they have? Okay.
Yes, and they want to turn them over.
Okay, and any updates on a planning director?
Yes and no. The advertisement is still out.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Minor on planning? All right, and then it says Danny, come on down. Acting Director Wood. Before you start, I just want to give you a little bit of praise. You know, September of last year, you were going to be our Acting Director of Public Works for 30 days. Well, things happened and it extended. And boy, I tell you, you have been hit with a lot of snow that we haven't seen in years. Water breaks left and right there, and you have handled it beautifully. So thank you so much. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to relieve you of your duty starting, soon and make you Assistant Director of Public Works, if that's okay with you. And then we're going to I'm going to have your cohort come up here. DR, come on up here and introduce as of 2 days ago, the Director of Public Works, DR Fox, who is returning home. You two are going to be lockstep. I know you're a fabulous pair there, and but I didn't want to take away this moment from you, Danny, because I know you love coming in front of us, and so I've prepared quite a few questions for you, like this many. So, but thank you and welcome, DR. Really appreciate you coming back and being part of the team.
Appreciate the opportunity.
So, with that said, any questions for Danny? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Danny, you guys did a phenomenal job with the snow removal. I reached out to Kristen to let her know you just excellent work. Previously, we were having a lot of contracts to review, I don't know what you call them, the pipes under the ground because they were eroding, they were old. Haven't seen that in a minute. So how was that work done, and is that work continuing? Are we still identifying pipes up under the ground that could possibly erode, burst?
so,
We're replacing a lot.
Melinda Adams goes out and does a yearly inspection on all the stormwater pipes. We currently got a couple projects that are underway now. Quailwood Parkway
Okay,
is one of them. And then we have a bunch of driveways that we plan on knocking out this spring ourselves.
okay.
We have plenty of pipe in stock, and we plan on jumping on that as soon as the weather starts breaking.
Okay, thank you. They were bursting up. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
major projects. You guys were over off of 301 in front of that hotel for almost what, 2, 3 weeks?
Oh,
Wha-
yeah, that was a messed up how the water tied in for that hotel. It
Mhm.
was put in, I guess, when that hotel was built in the 60s or whatever, and we had to do a drill and tap into a main and do away with a bunch of old galvanized pipe and got that back up to our standards.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Thank you. Again, I would also add on, thank you very much. I know you guys do a lot, and I had a bunch of folks in Clark's Run really were very grateful for snow removal. So thank you for that. I guess 2 questions. I know there was a study done to look at the water rates and including the EDUs. What is the status of that? Was it called Baker Tilly?
Yes, the Baker Tilly study, we have that study. Do you mind me answering for
Yeah,
you?
go ahead.
We have that study, and we're using that to work on the water allocation process.
Okay, that was my next question because I was on a call with somebody and they said to me, well, they asked me for the EDU equivalent. I said, as far as I know, it's EDU. And I mentioned the study. And she said, well, no, it's 208. And I'm going like, that's
It's only
news.
208.
That's news to me. That's why I'm asking the question. So,
I saw that number 208, but I did not see that in the Baker Tilly study. I saw that in the county's water element.
oh,
Um,
okay.
I
So,
was reviewing it for something else and 208 was in there.
so so the actual study is that going to be released to us or the council or what?
We have the study in a
Okay.
draft form.
Okay.
So until it's formalized,
All right.
we're still using it just internally.
And then what do you estimate for when if it changes, what is the process that we would change or amend our EDU numbers? And then how would it affect the allocation system?
I don't have an answer for you for that. I don't know. I don't know what the process would be.
And then final question. Have there been any issues with overflow at the treatment plant?
That would be a question for Kurt.
Because somebody told me there was, and I said, I have no knowledge of it. So I'm just trying to verify some things. That's all.
During the heavy rain, we had some issues handling all the flow, but MDE's come and done inspections and everything's been good.
So they were notified and it's
Yep.
been
Yeah,
resolved.
MDE's been notified.
Okay.
They've been aware of everything and they've come and inspected the plant.
And then, so is there a notification process to you guys when there's an overflow that somebody sees, or is there a sign? I mean, I'm getting all kinds of different rumors about what happens.
So
I can't hear you.
Oh.
Thank you so much.
can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was it?
So when there's an overflow,
Oh, yes. So
what is the notification process to the town?
Uh,
Or is there one?
it's usually a visual one is what it is. Now it's still all treated. Everything is still treated. It just,
Okay.
it still goes through UV disinfection and everything. So
But somebody said to me, and again, I don't know, I'm just trying to get to the ground truth here. So is there a sign or something that says if you see an overflow, there's a number to call, or, I mean, there's no,
no, we have numbers posted at various parts around town with our number to call if you see something,
okay.
but no, there's no number posted at the plant.
I mean, when I was talking to the individual, I said, I'm not a water sewer guy, and call you guys. And I did say, that was during the period of the heavy rain. So,
Yeah.
but I'm glad you clarified that. So we get it on a record that's even if it's overflow, it's still
Yeah, it
treated
still goes
somehow.
through the
Right,
UV
okay.
and still treated, disinfected.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yep.
Thank you.
Talk to Mr. Ekman.
Yes, it was his birthday, yeah, 2 weeks ago. Yep. Catherine went and saw him and hung out with him for a while, and he's doing good. He's 95. Yeah. So his sons are with him almost every day. So
Okay, thank you.
I don't know who's responsible, but just a quick question. And I appreciate the pictures highlighting the work on Tillman Lake. Any update on when that might, I'm getting a lot of,
Yeah, so we plan on open Tillman Lake March 1st.
okay.
Great, our biker got all the excavating done. The dam's been inspected by dam safety and everything passed. We have a little bit of work to do to the entrance to Tillman Lake. I plan on knocking out this
Okay.
week, and the first we plan on opening it.
So the runners can run again.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'll echo everyone's sentiments. Danny, you did a fantastic job as I alluded earlier in a previous email, and as I saw you out in the probably the coldest day we had, knee deep in cold water. But thank you, because it takes that kind of dedication and just my heartfelt appreciation for kind of being the stand-in leader when it called on. And DR, welcome back. I understand, but look forward to seeing the great things that as you take the helm, in the next couple of years.
Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give you a round of applause. Thank you, Danny. And anytime you choose, Danny, anytime you choose to come in front of council to report, you just let DR know, okay?
Of course.
Thank you, guys. All right. It brings us to matters of council discussion. Direct service proposal for Wood Valley Community Strategies.
So before you have a proposal. Staff is recommending retaining Mr. Jamie Kendrick of Wood Valley Community Strategies. He's been essential for the town maintaining its momentum with key transportation projects, such as the Little Plata Bikeway and the Safe Streets for All initiative, to ensure a smooth transition in the procurement for future planning services. Jamie was with Mead and Hunt, who was our transportation engineer, and he has gone out on his own. And in doing so, in November of 2024, actually our contract with Mead and Hunt has expired. So we really need to develop an RFP for that and put that out to bid. But in the meantime, we're requesting Wood Valley Community Strategies to finish up the project with the Bikeway project and the Safe Streets initiative through Jamie Kendrick.
All right. Any questions for Ms. Minor? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the cost of the contract is going to be $31,800. And then 65% of that would be billed to grants, which is $20,670, leaving the town with exposure of only $11,000.
Yes, ma'am.
And Jamie has been excellent for us. So
He has, he's the one that was able to get these grants for us.
I remember.
Yeah.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Any other questions? Yes.
Mr. Kendrick has been for sure excellent. I know sometimes with consultation agreements and people leaving one company to another, sometimes past clients that become current clients of people that go out are kind of caught in crosshairs of litigation as far as non-competes. Do we know as to whether or not Mr. Kendrick has any issues with taking on us that he had as a prior client with his former employer?
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer.
I know it's a weird question, but it's come up on the professional side,
Yes.
and I would hate for us to be stuck in a weird situation. If that's not a problem, I'm totally in favor of going forward with Mr. Kendrick to finish the project and perhaps be.
Like I said, I'm not aware of that. I would hope that he would have disclosed that before he presented.
Conflict of interest on the back of the agreement. Yeah.
Because we did address that in a meeting, and I did ask him how that would, if he was poaching, I think is the word I used, and he said, it was to the point, and he said, no, he did not have, there was not a conflict.
It's addressed.
Yeah. So, all right, so any other questions?
I do, yeah. I'm sorry. Thank you for the time. I have a couple of questions. So this is like a bridge contract? I mean, until we renegotiate or we do another contract with Mead Hunt, or is this in lieu of or
It's
another
in
one?
lieu of. Not in lieu of. It's in addition to, we still need to do a transportation
Yeah, we do.
engineer
Yeah.
for all of our other projects going on. This is specifically for the bikeway
Okay.
initiative and the
Okay.
safe streets.
And I did see, and I want to highlight this, he said, work plan and deliverables, the town will be updated each month with the town's project manager. Who will be the town's project manager?
Right now it's Mayor James and myself. We meet with Jamie at least once a month, if not 2 or 3 times.
And would there be, if there's any relevant information that would be forwarded, or at least the council would be informed about that, those updates?
Yes, be
Okay.
glad to update you as part of the,
And then this is probably not a fair question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Any guesstimate when the La Plata bikeway or roadway would be completed sometime this century, or is that or later on this year?
we were very encouraged, but we've come upon a stumbling block on Rosewick Road with wetlands
Oh,
that we're trying to work through with State Highway and the county.
mm-hmm.
And there's one other easement area that we're trying to get. So we're working on it. I can't give you a date.
This century would be, good. That was my
I
question.
didn't mean to be sarcastic,
No,
but
no,
But
no.
I am.
just, and
It was moving quickly.
I know it was, and that's, yeah, I mean, it was like,
I stopped it.
and so I hope we can assume that our grant money will still hold up, given the state's budget problems with DOT. When I checked the revised MDOT plan, it's still there, so we'll see. And then finally, again, unfair question, what is the status or any movement on the Southwest Access Management Plan?
Right, that's an unfair question. I do not know.
Well-
Sorry, I can't answer that question.
Okay, because again, I know he started, and our former planning director were doing a lot of work on that. And I asked it because in the next topic about hazardous plan that the county has, part of one of my concerns that I shared with you and us in an email was communities only have one way in and one way out. And that Southwest Management Plan is trying to resolve some of those issues. So it'd be great if we could get at some point in time, some status of where we are on that. Not that completion will happen overnight, but at least some semblance of what progress is being made. Thank you.
Councilman Jenkins, if I could try to take a stab at answering that. It is because the funds have not been delivered yet for the grant that was there, all of that. He said it would be starting in the spring. So on the Southwest Access Plan. So it
And-
will be March timeframe. April is what he said in our last meeting.
And when you say grant, is that a state grant or
Grant that
The
is
feds?
Safe Streets.
the
That
the
falls
federal
under-
grant?
Correct.
The
That
friend
falls under
85,
that.
okay, all
So
right,
it'll be this
Okay.
spring. So in the next couple months.
okay. Thank you.
All right, so I'm looking for a consensus to move this forward to legislation. Councilman Winkler,
Yes.
Councilman Trolinger,
Say yes. I don't think the conflict of interest sentence in the letter is sufficient to address the concerns I had as it relates to meeting with us. For as long as that's clear, it's yes.
Councilwoman Bryant Ward,
Yes.
Councilman Jenkins,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. So we'll see this in just a little bit. All right, Chief, with your FARO request.
Captain Payne speaks technology. Good evening again, Mayor and Council. The La Plata Police Department's requesting approval to purchase a Faro Focus laser scanner to electronically survey collision reconstruction scenes and crime scenes. Faro Technologies is a leader in 3D measurement and imaging. When I reconstructed collisions or any outside crime scenes in the 80s and 90s, we used multiple tape measures, 10 penny nails, and a tuna fish can full of lead to hold our things in place. We're not much more advanced here than we were in the 80s and 90s in Greenbelt. It's not unusual for a major roadway to be closed for 4 to 6 hours to map a fatal crime scene the way that we have been doing it. Same holds true for inside crime scenes. The Faro technology will reduce the time officers would close roadways like Crane Highway, Charles Street, and Hawthorne Road. We found all too well over the last year where we had 4 fatal collisions in the town that it created quite a bit of issues for our residents and people passing through. Not only will there be a reduction at the at-scene investigation time, but also generating the diagrams and not having to do it by hand with drafting tools will save time and provide prosecutors the information that they needed to prosecute a case. And they also are extremely helpful in civil litigation. The final product, the Faro is much more accurate than the old style of measuring with tape measures and using tuna fish cans. At this point, I'll defer to Mike so he can speak technology.
I'm not going to speak much technology, but basically what the chief just said about the 80s and 90s and tuna fish can is pretty much how Captain Norris and I measure our fatal collision data as of today. So the current way Captain Norris and I measure and collect the data is by measuring tape, digital wheel, the tuna fish cans, and things of such. The last fatal that I investigated involved a pedestrian, and the collision scene exceeded 450 feet, and it was larger than a football field. So imagine how big that scene is and all the data that had to be collected. With that being said, by simply using measuring tape, I have a 250 measuring feet, 250 foot measuring tape. I had to bring out a second one that Captain Norris had, and had to utilize 2 of those tapes to measure my entire scene. And it depends on how many data points that I'm collecting on the scene, depends on the timing it takes us to process a scene. It's pretty much like with the scene with the fatal pedestrian, it took up to almost a couple hours to collect all the measurements. And that's looking at probably about 50 to 60 data points that were measured out. So with the Faro, the average setup time with that equipment, it takes about 4 minutes to set up the Faro. With that, it takes about 33 minutes for the Faro technology to scan an entire crash scene, as opposed to doing the measurements that take up to a couple hours. Also, what I was explaining with the hand measurements, we're just measuring the data points that we're collecting. But with the Faro, it's collecting over 44 million points of data. And in order for it to capture all that, it takes altogether about 40 minutes to use this piece of equipment to collect over 44 million data points. The Faro scans the scene, it sits on a tripod. When it's sitting on the tripod and it's scanning, it allows the investigator, such as I, to make phone calls and notifications, as opposed to, taping everything out and documenting. So while it's scanning the scene, I'm able to make notification to the state's attorney's office to inform them what's going on. I can update the chief of what's going on so we can get information out on social media about road closures. I can contact the forensic investigator and also the medical examiner's office, and also allows the investigator time to research next of kins, so we can make that notification and there's no delay to deliver that devastating news. Once all that data is collected from the Faro, it's uploaded into Crash Zone software, and the data points can be analyzed and formulated by simply a drag of the mouse. The current method we utilize is using a Blue Blitz template, and the scale crash scene is on a sheet of paper, and we take measurements with the Blue Blitz and plug all that information into formulas to get speed, angles, and things as such. But with the computer software that we uploaded it into, it would automatically do all those measurements for us.
When time saved, employee expenses are saved. When roadways are closed for a shorter amount of time, residents aren't stuck in sprawl, and they're not burning gas while being frustrated because they're late for whatever they were going to. At some point, this unit will pay for itself probably many times over in savings of overtime and things such as that. But for me as chief, what really stands out is the human factor. Beyond the dollars, I reconstructed collisions in Greenbelt, and I probably reconstructed 25 or so. Crime scenes, I was way too many to count. I also ran mutual aid with Greenbelt. We did to the barrack out of College Park and the United States Park Police on the Parkway. I have seen what a human body goes through when it's struck by a car or what it goes through when it's hit by a bullet. If we can reduce the exposure of our people of having to endure that for hours and hours and hours, their mental health would be better in the long term. So all the selling factors to me as a chief is, yes, it'll be cheaper in the long run. That's a positive. Two, what we will present to Tony Covington will be a very nice, finely polished product for him to move forward if there's a case that needs to be prosecuted, whether it's a crime scene or a traffic fatality scene. What we really like about the Faro is the Faro can be used inside and outside. A lot of agencies buy a Faro or one piece of equipment, and it's good for outside crime scenes, and they buy another expensive piece of equipment for inside. This does both. 38 years I've been doing this. Two of the most graphic crime scenes I've ever been on have been here in La Plata. The pedestrian that was struck here a couple months back, and the homicide, the quadruple homicide, suicide in Agriculpia. Those things our folks can't unsee. So if we can limit the exposure, it's worth the price. That in and itself to me. We currently have 3 collision reconstructionists, Captain Payne, Captain Norris, and myself. On Friday, Corporal Career graduates from Crash 3. That's after 6 weeks of training, and he doesn't go all 6 weeks at one time. He does 2. A couple months later, he does 2, and then he does 2. And we have 2 more officers who are moving in that way. We also have 3 crime scene techs, Lieutenant Posey, Acting Sergeant Johnson, and Mary Cheney. We also have our 2 non-sworn folks who are going to be going to training, Sheila Green and Kim Hayden, for forensics. We have the people in place to use this tonight if we had it. So 4 years ago, when we looked at it, it was a pipe dream to me. And then as we looked at it and we see the amount of fatal collisions that we're having and the increase, I always talk to the council about when we look at calls, there's call volume and there's call complexity. And we're running more and more complex calls. And this sort of technology is extremely needed. Our recommendation is that we reprogram $70,000 of the ARPA money that we had set aside, and we know it was moved to another account, but it was being set aside to buy license plate reader technology and use that to pay the lion's share of this. I'm a big fan of license plate readers, but as those of us who have sat in legislative committees here, I know the mayor has and other folks, every year there's an attack in Annapolis on license plate readers. And it doesn't make sense to me, at least at this point, to spend $70,000 on license plate readers when next year the folks in Annapolis could say you can't use them. So despite the fact that they're great for helping solve crimes and the list of crimes that they have solved, I just can't see saying or recommending that sort of purchase. But I can recommend the fact that we could use this Faro technology tonight if we had it. The other upside to this, to me, is, and when Mike spoke with the vendor, this can be used. We can help Public Works if they need some sort of accurate diagramming. We can help the planning department if they need some sort of accurate diagramming. The agency has a history of helping our fellow departments here with message boards, drones, and speed trailers. This Faro would be the same. It's available to everybody. It is a technical instrument. So part of this price includes training for how many?
Up to 5.
Up to 5 people. And we will make sure 5 people attend this training to know how to use this. But anyway, for those reasons, we're recommending, I know we took a long way to get to where we're at, but for those reasons, we're recommending the purchase of the Faro. We're ready to answer any questions.
All right, Chief, I'm going to start off on this one. So 80,000 with 70 that you are reallocating, which is great. So that leaves a balance of 10,000. Do you have unused funds in your capital of this year in FY25 that could be used for that versus hitting the fund balance?
I will defer that question to the treasurer because I don't know if she knows.
At this point, there is funds in the capital that was budgeted for the police. The only question I would ask is, do the police need those funds for what they originally planned it for? And if they don't, then it's available, but are they planning to budget that in the next year? Were those things? That would be my only question.
Okay.
Looking at where we're at now, I wouldn't think so. And if we were having to do that, we'd have a conversation with the treasurer and come back to council.
Wonderful. And I love the fact, I think a selling point for me, and I did a lot of research. I looked at different police departments across the United States that have put reports in that have showed how they save time. But I think the big selling point for me is working with Public Works and with planning and with the stormwater management. That was a huge one where they can look at the erosion control measurements, the compliance with stormwater permits. It was endless. And when I said I dove into this, I didn't realize that I was going down a very large rabbit hole with that. The annual maintenance software is $33,190. I got that. And you just indicated that 5 people will be included on this for training. You've already have 3, another one graduating, and then you're sending the other 2 or the other 3, right? You're sending 3?
Well, I think what we will do, because we have the people who do the crime scene techs and we have reconstructionists. What we did in Greenbelt is we put, if there was, you only could put X amount of people in, we tried to use the crime scene techs as much as possible to teach them how to use these things, because while the reconstruction is still on the scene, and some of them will learn how to use it as well. They always work in teams, but I don't want anybody to be on that fatal scene with the pedestrian, but I was a proud chief watching my people work as they were trying to identify this individual, while they were trying to chat with the family, interviewing witnesses. There are so many things that are going on that if I have the crime scene tech come out and they use the Pharaoh with the assistance of, the knowledge of our reconstructionists, that I think we get more bang for our buck out of that. And we'll have internals on the command staff about that, but I think 5 should be enough. And then those people can teach somebody else. So the first couple of times it goes out, we may bring more people to teach them how to use the Pharaoh. But to me, and I know I'm going a long way around this, we will use all 5 spaces and probably lean more towards the crime scene techs. We'll certainly have a reconstructionist or 2 because they work in teams.
Where I was going with that is to see if maybe our stormwater manager or someone from Public Works could get one of those slots for training so that they could utilize this as well, instead of taking a resource from the police department to train them, since that's there.
Well, yeah, we can have that discussion. I would prefer that we would be the ones that come out and do the instrument and they direct us what they want done. Because we're going to use it a lot more often than they are. So just like with the drone, we get the request, we put the drone up and we map out and then turn over all the things that are needed. But it's a discussion we can have, that's for sure.
Last question I have, recertification. Is there a recertification, and if there is, what is the cost? And if it's not included in here for certification, what is the cost for number?
Are you talking about certification for the end user?
For the,
No, it's once you're trained, you're trained in it. Yes, there's no in service now. I can see if they push out like something new with the software program for the if we need to send it out to get it updated or something they added. I'm sure they'll give us some literature on it, but there's no like annual in-service training that you have to take, every so often. Okay.
Good. All right. That's a first. I haven't done that in a while. You have questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So in your proposal, you stated that the additional 10,884 would come out of unused LPPD ARPA funds or fund balance.
Well, and I think Ms. Larson just said we have capital money available in it now, so we would use the capital money that's in our current budget.
So there are no additional ARPA funds that you could use that you're not going to use? Because that's what this states, and I just want.
Yeah. I don't know if we have that much, but yeah.
Okay. Okay, then my other question is, in the past 24 months, how many fatal crashes have we had that would allow us to use the Faro?
Well, we've had 4 last year and I believe 2 the year before, so that's 6. But that's just on the traffic side. There's crime scenes that we could bring this out to map out. One the other night that I notified council about, so it will get used.
Okay, and then if the count, how many of those fatal crashes and crime scenes were you on that the county, the sheriff's department wasn't on, if they have one?
The sheriff's department does have one. They will not let us use it.
And do they not use it when they accompany you on?
They
these things?
helped us with one crime scene, and that's because of the time of day.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you. Thank Chief for bringing this forward and that the ingenuity to try to fund this reasonably. My question is, you mentioned earlier that this can be used for pedestrian type accidents. So does it have any kind of capability where when you map it, can it recognize or have input about maybe there was an issue with the road design or the type of road or not?
Well,
Safety improvements to a road, I
It would
guess.
put out a scale diagram
Mm-hmm.
that if, I'm sure an engineer or expert could look at it and tell you, or if our reconstructionists have a question, they can bring it to a county state engineer to go, hey, we've seen this. One of the things in Greenbelt, I don't know if anybody's familiar, I think Mr. Winkler is, with Spring Hill Lake.
Mm-hmm.
But we had a road that was 25 miles an hour, and we had numerous fatals on it over the course of time. And when we actually brought engineers in and they looked at it with us, why we were having them there, and it was always the same set of 4 or 5 telephone poles that people
Mhm.
didn't. It's because the roadway was made with a negative super elevation. So the only thing I know that means is it slants the wrong way.
Right.
So, and that was a big causative factor for us in those. They came in and changed the design. I don't remember another serious collision in that area.
That's exactly what I was asking about.
Yeah.
And then, so then could this be used to look at intersections and then could it be incorporated with the safety committee work in terms of trying to improve safety aspect of town streets or roads?
I don't see any limitations to it because it's a surveyor's tool for the most part.
Because I would certainly urge that, and your analysis of what, and I know where you mean in Greenbelt, I know exactly what, I asked that question, and you answered it in tandem with what an organization called Strong Towns does, and they have developed a crash analysis studio. And they go out and do those kind of thing, and they look at all the factors, including road design. So that's why I asked the question. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Chief, I appreciate your guys' presentation. I wanted to ask some clarification on Councilwoman Bryant Wood's question, because when I first started practicing, it seemed as though Maryland State Police was really the only ones doing the fatal reconstructions back then. What is it that causes our town police to be primary on a fatal versus, as Councilwoman Bryant's board said, county or Maryland State Police, our barracks over here?
Well, the barrack will only handle 301. And we have had fatals on 301 to where there are no troopers available, which is much more frequent than you think with that sort of training. So it's ours. The same thing with the county. The county will go, it's in La Plata. My theory is we ask our officers to enforce the traffic laws on those roadways. We ask them to investigate accidents on those roadways. we certainly need to own our own house and investigate the fatal collisions.
To that end, can you talk to us a little bit about not just the time efficiency of this device, but also the increase of accuracy of the measurements available versus the hand use when, as you've described, fatal collision, there are so many other things going on. How much more accurate can we believe this data to be that this device will help us with?
The main thing you're looking at is the human error. You know, you're the human. You're going out there with somebody else, and you're expecting to have that line to be straight because, you know, just an inch or 2 inches off can really throw off the data to come up with an analysis. One of the scenarios that the vendor set up was a scene inside a house with splatter on the wall. And he was able to scan this room with the splatter, for example. And I know this is not a collision, but he was able to scan the room, take the splatter that was on the wall, and tell you the trajectory of a gun, of where it was shot. So it plugs in these calculations such as skid. Obviously, human, you're going to have error, but with the computer, it's collecting over 44 million data points with the formulas that are already built into it. It's going to get you accurate data.
Right, because and just so we all know, so you're going out to a scene, every measurement is placed into a mathematical equation to try to figure out distance, time, speed, point of impact, who's at fault, what happened, time of death, and all of those things. I think if Chief Schinner is saying, look, the responsibility is becoming more and more on our town police department, it's imperative that our residents have the best possible technology available to explain to loved ones what happened, hold the people that are negligent in the situation fully accountable by allowing the state's attorney to have the most accurate data available, and not being able to throw our hands up and say, oh, well, the county should have come out because they have the Faro device, but it was the wrong time of day. So I appreciate you guys reallocating resources to find something that's going to be practical and I think, unfortunately, very helpful for us in the future. And, you know, the amount of fatals we've had, it's not surprising with our drivers in our area. It's unfortunate, you know, but it's probably not a blip. It's probably not an aberration. So thank you very much.
And if I could just follow up with that. This is able, and you talked about mathematical formulas. When we go out with measuring tapes and 10 penny nails to hold things down, and then making sure that you find your 0 point and drive 10 penny nails into the asphalt and spray them in case the road gets resurfaced, you'll still do that just in case you have to go out and recreate what you've recreated at the crime scene. But the accuracy, not only in the measuring, it's going to be the accuracy in the diagram that comes out. There is so much room for human error when you sit there at that architect's table and you try to draw out that scaled diagram, or you spend a lot of money and you have a demonstrative evidence graphic artist put that together. And most of the time, at least my experience in Greenbelt, is we paid that, the state's attorney didn't. So yes, this is a needed piece of equipment. And I hope I made that clear. It is something that will serve our residents in multiple capacities beyond the law enforcement. And it does bring a good product to Mr. Covington. And as you know, Mr. Trollinger, I can't tell you any fatal accident that I reconstructed that I did not end up 3 years later in civil litigation testifying as an expert as to what happened. And this helps give our people that credibility and credentials when they are being validated and being an expert. So to me, as the town grows, as we know, this is going to continue to be a need. The superintendent of the state police had I can't recall the number of people that troopers wrote citations to traveling over 100 miles an hour this year. It is something like quadruple of what it was like 5 years ago. So we're seeing, maybe not 100 miles an hour, but we're seeing that behavior, especially on 301.
more need and things are being placed at your feet. I can appreciate allocating some ARPA funds over and saying, we feel this is a much better need. I would concur though with the mayor in that, it's a new toy and I can appreciate how you don't want to loan it out because if it comes back and it's broken. But I think that given the propensity, I would hate to see an officer be called because they're helping, not because they're not willing, but I would strongly encourage that maybe you include somebody from, whether it's planning and zoning or from stormwater, just in the off chance that they need to use it, you kind of feel comfortable in, here it is with the proviso that it is returned in the manner in which it was given, but that's something we can discuss maybe at a later date, but I think it's a much needed
I do too.
tool in
and
your
with
tool belt.
Stormwater, just some of the things they can do, scan the storm drains, the culverts, the retention ponds and underground systems to detect blockage or needed maintenance. That's a big thing. And is there some type of warranty on this? I mean,
Yeah.
can you
it's
buy it?
Listed in there, it comes with a multiple year warranty. I'm sure when that's up, they will send us a nice letter saying, if you want to have this, like we get with our cars all the time, but
I have a point of clarification and then a question. So if I heard you correctly, Chief, you're still going to use the tin cans and the,
No,
that
we-
will totally eliminate.
yeah,
it.
the only thing we're gonna do is in some poor collision reconstruction, just learned this the hard way, that they went out and reconstructed an accident. And you always hate putting, especially neighborhood roads, you always hate putting markings on the road because it's going to remind the family of what happened there for weeks to come. Someone comes in and they put new asphalt over top. That's why a 10-penny nail is driven into the asphalt so you can come back and find it with a metal detector later. So you'll know where your 0 point was because everything runs off the 0 point.
Okay, so you will use this Faro and you won't see the 250-foot tapes and the
Right.
pin pa- Okay, good.
Exactly.
And the other question is, so now that this kind of changes the MOU with the Charles County Sheriff's
Yes, actually, I had that in my notes that this is a huge step to helping us change the MOU. Huge.
So that's what I
You
would
should
like.
never volunteer to do something if you're not equipped to handle the task. And now not only do we have the trained people in place, we will have the technology in place for us to justify the MOU change.
And I would like to see the change in the MOU concurrently with this so that it doesn't get pushed down. the
We,
road
we,
on that.
we can only ask for that meeting.
Yeah.
The 5% discount on this does expire on the 28th. So we will need to get them a purchase order. And once it's approved, then we will push back over to the sheriff's office. And they're always receptive, but you don't always get an audience immediately because they're busy.
All right, any last questions? So I am looking, thank you both for answering all of our questions.
We're
and
sorry we
indulging
took
us.
so long.
Oh, no, that's okay. This is very important when you're spending $80,000. I'm looking for a consensus to move it forward to legislation. Councilman Winkler,
Yes.
Councilman Trolinger,
Yes.
Councilwoman Bryant Ward,
Yes.
Councilman Jenkins.
Yes.
And I am a yes with the fact that stormwater management or public
Mhm.
works gets a slot there so that they're trained as well.
Well,
So,
you said that with the fact that we talked about that being a issue of further discussion,
oh,
right? I
with
mean,
the possibility instead of fact.
because I feel like if we're gonna take a slot, those departments also need to shoulder the burden of the maintenance and the training, since it's coming fully from the police department's ARPA funds. So I think they're open to collaborate, but if we're gonna have a discussion, that's kind of the
Possibility.
complicated.
There you go. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That brings us to the Charles County Hazard Mitigation Plan. Ms. Minor.
The Charles County remains committed to a long-term strategy to reduce risk associated with natural and man-made hazards. The Hazard Mitigation Plan update serves as a comprehensive framework for reducing vulnerability and enhancing community resilience against future hazard events. By implementing the pre-disaster mitigation strategies, Charles County aims to save lives, protect property, and minimize economic and environmental disruptions. This document is reviewed, edited, and adopted every 5 years by a committee of local officials and other stakeholders. And the last adoption by the town and county was in December of 2018. I serve on that committee representing the town, as does Ryan Hicks for Indian Head. There was no representative from Fort Tobacco on this committee, but the purpose for adopting this is so that it strengthens our eligibility for state and federal grants should there be a disaster. And the county adopted their plan in December of 2024, and at which time they asked us to adopt the plan as well. That got lost in translation, and I didn't bring it forward to you in a timely manner. That's why it's coming to you in February, 2 months after the fact that the county adopted it.
All right, any questions? Go ahead.
Thank you for the report and the summary. It is a long report. I didn't read it all. But, so should I noticed on one of the pages that it had a matrix about things that supposedly we were missing or designation. One of them is called Firewise Community Designation. Is that something that we should pursue in the future?
That's an option the county has pursued.
Right, I saw that, yeah.
So if it's.
And I went to the website. I mean, it's, I'm not sure it could be that difficult, but it just, to me, it would be another layer of protection for the residents. And then just a comment. I hope in the future council will go back and look at our subdivision ordinance, specifically about residential access. And so we minimize or prohibit over that we don't have one way in and one way out for residential communities. And some communities where I used to work, and even I think in Charles County, they had specific regulations that said over a certain number of cars or traffic, you got to have 2 entrances for safety, for egress and egress. And I've noticed we have a couple here. And when we have a problem, we're going to have a problem with fire access and other issues. So I would hope that a future council will then look at that ordinance and change it. Thank you.
Any other questions on this topic? I'm looking for consensus to move this forward to legislation. Councilman Winkler,
Yes.
Councilman Challenger,
Yes.
Councilwoman Bryant Ward,
Yes.
Councilman Jenkins,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Which brings us to legislation. The first piece of legislation is Resolution 25-02, Professional Service Agreement with Wood Valley Community Strategies for introduction and consideration of adoption.
Madam Mayor, a resolution concerning professional service agreement, Wood Valley Community Strategies, for the purpose of authorizing the town manager to enter into a contract agreement for professional services for the management of various planning and capital projects in the town of La Plata and all matters generally relating thereto.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adopt Resolution 2502 as presented?
Madam Mayor, I would make a motion to adopt Resolution 2502, Professional Service Agreement, Wood Valley Community Strategies as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second it.
Any discussion? Yes.
Just one question, following up on Councilman Trollinger's concern about the conflict of interest. If we identify that there's a conflict of interest, will that void this contract with Wood Valley?
I don't know. That is a legal question.
Yeah, so I'm not our attorney, I'm just an attorney, so I can't answer that, but I mean, I think the big question is, are we protected, right?
Mhm.
I think, I mean, pending resolution of that question, I don't think there's anything with getting clarification for Councilman Trollinger's point that, and as Councilwoman Bryant Ward alluded, I think that's a viable question that we need to have answered. Yeah.
So.
We can bring this back on
The 11th.
11th.
All
Madam Mayor, a
right.
motion has been made and properly seconded.
So all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Nay. So
Nay.
the nays, 4-1, have it. All right, we will bring this back on March 11th. Thank you very much. All right, and that brings us to our next resolution 25-03, La Plata Police Department Faro request.
Madam Mayor, a resolution concerning the Plata Police Department Faro Focus Laser Scanner purchase for the purpose of authorizing the Chief Executive Officer to enter into a contract purchase agreement for the purchase of a Faro Focus Laser Scanner and all matters generally relating thereto.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adopt resolution 25-03 as presented?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we adopt resolution 25-03, La Plata Police Department Faro Focus Laser Scanner purchase as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Motion carries. And last one is resolution 25-04, the hazard mitigation plan update for Charles County, Maryland.
Madam Mayor, a resolution concerning 2024 hazard mitigation plan update for Charles County, Maryland for the purpose of adopting the 2024 hazard mitigation plan update for Charles County, Maryland, and all matters generally relating thereto.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adopt resolution 25-04 as presented?
Madam Mayor, make a motion to accept resolution 2504, the 2024 hazard mitigation plan update for Charles County, Maryland as presented.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
I second.
Second it.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Motion carries. That brings us to our reports from Mayor and Town Council. Councilman Winkler.
No reports at this time. Yeah, I should have something in the from a historic preservation meeting. It was canceled in February, so we'll wait for the next one.
Thank you. Councilman Trollinger.
Yes, we still have a vacancy on Keep La Plata Beautiful, but we do not have current meeting notes because we were not able to meet this week as scheduled. So check in with you later.
When's your next meeting?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, next month though?
Likely,
Okay,
considering, yeah, we're not going to do it the next couple of days.
well, there you go. I love the sarcasm.
I was
All right.
not sarcastic. I had to look at my watch and say, how likely?
You got me on that one. Councilwoman Bryant Ward.
No report. There was no meeting of the planning commission in February.
Thank you very much. Councilman Jenkins.
Nothing to report.
Okay. For me, I just want to thank our team again for literally weathering the storm. You all pulled together, and it's very rare that we close town hall. In fact, they usually make everyone come in if they can, and under the direction of our great assistant town manager, safety is paramount, and we gave a day off to some, but not all. Danny and his crew worked 22 hours, and really appreciate that. And I know Chief, all of your team was out there too. So I just want to let you know that we have witnessed what you have done for the town, and we are very grateful. And with that said, I move to adjourn this meeting. Thank you for coming and have a great night. He's up in C with Goddard. He did. He had the whole